Great. Nice.
Yeah, I would like to welcome Lidia, who is a Dartmouth 14, they're 15, and actually is a CEO and co-founder of her own startup, Lodestone Biomedical, and works at the Magnuson Center.
Yes, so former co-founder and CEO. So I think you stole my introduction. But for everyone here, my name is Lidia Schonenberg. I'm a Dartmouth 14, Thayer 15. I'm the current program manager for startup support at the Magnuson Center for Entrepreneurship. And what that means is that I'm on point for all things startup at Dartmouth. So from undergraduates with a shower thought to startups who are realizing revenue, and that includes alumni. And I do this through running operations for the Dartmouth Innovations Accelerator for Cancer. I run the Tuck Magnuson Startup Incubator. I manage and provide leadership to Dartmouth Angels, which is an angels group for Dartmouth alumni who are interested in investing in Dartmouth founders. And I administer grants and, like I said, hold office hours for almost anything that you can think of. So it's my pleasure to be here today. I'm going to be talking to everybody a little bit about pitching, which I think is probably one of life's most important skills. I'm going to talk a little bit about what is pitching, when you might pitch, what makes a good pitch, and then have everybody do a little bit of an exercise if they're willing. And so this is meant to be a low pressure, friendly environment, just to get us all familiar with some of the concepts and some of the high notes of pitching. So most importantly, what is a pitch? I can't think of anything that isn't a pitch that doesn't involve making a connection with somebody, telling a story, making a call to action, or making an ask. So I think that the most important part of a pitch is really the connection piece. So normally a pitch really involves all four of these components. So, if you're working on a project and you run into somebody in an elevator and ask you what it is that you're doing, your response is a pitch, because what you're doing is trying to understand what it is that this person maybe is interested in hearing. And it's going to be different depending on whether or not it's your grandma, whether or not it's somebody who has industry experience, or somebody who's a neighbor who you're going to explain things at different levels. So all in all, a pitch is never the same, depending on who it is that you're giving to it. But it normally involves, like I said, all four of these things. Normally, even if you're just talking to your neighbor, you're putting in place some of these things, which is, if you're an early stage startup, you might want to think about giving small threads of things that you're maybe looking for, connections you're looking to make. So that way you can have people interact with what it is that you're saying. You're not just saying something that's totally technical to somebody who maybe has no idea how to reply to that. You're giving them something that they can respond to, connect with, and maybe even help you to advance your idea or your startup, whatever it is. So when might you pitch? Well, every day. I can't think of a day when I haven't made a pitch to my 1-year-old to take a nap, for a job, for an investment. You do it in the grocery store, for a download or a follow. You're making a digital pitch to watch the movie that you want when you're arguing with your siblings and you're trying to explain to them why you should be watching whatever it is, The Notebook versus a Marvel movie. And to your art professor, this is actually, I was an engines modified with studio art major. And I think one of the biggest things that I took away from my art classes, besides, some of the problem solving skills, is the pitching, right? And you're explaining to your art professor, yes, the choices that I made, totally all intentional. And so it's a really important thing to be able to distill what it is that you're doing and explain it to who it is. So this is an image that I like to show everybody during all of my pitch workshops. But I don't know if anybody can think about the last time that they heard a presentation that was totally untailored to them, or that was really about the person who was giving the presentation. This is probably what your face looked like, because the most important part about a pitch is knowing who your audience is, and again, trying to connect with them. The art reference in the previous slide was totally for all of you. But again, picking the things, right? If I was talking about my life as whatever it is, late 20s, early 30s mother, probably you could relate to some of it on a human level, but it's probably not the right audience, right? So this is a Dartmouth audience. You should give a Dartmouth pitch. So the most important thing, again, is to remember that a pitch is not about you. So you need to be taking stock of who's going to be in the crowd. You want to speak to their interests. What do you want them to take away? What do you want to motivate them to do? And this can be different things. So as I mentioned, You don't always have to be pitching for money. You can be pitching if you're, the analog for this is if you're pitching yourself for a position, it's going to be the same thing in an interview. Okay, if you're pitching to a company, you need to understand what that company is about. So that way you can highlight the aspects of your skill set or your characteristics that are in line with their culture or their skills that they're asking for as part of the role. You want to be thinking about before you head into that interview, what do you want them to be taking away from you, right? Do you want them to think that you're polished, that you're prepared, that you're funny? All of these things you can think about before you head in. So that way you have those at the forefront of your mind when you're giving your responses or preparing your responses for certain things. And then the last point, what do you want to motivate them to do? So you need to know who it is that you're speaking to. So that way you understand what their criteria is in evaluating what it is that you're saying, right? So in a job interview, again, it's about alignment with their company, with the fit with their job description, or in response to some of the things that they're saying that they're looking for. If it's for a business pitch, right, with investors, this is a different thing. Investors are going to be thinking about risk. They're going to be thinking about return on their money. They're going to be thinking about different things. So you want to make sure that you're addressing all of those points in your business pitch. And it's going to be different depending on whether or not you're pitching to an early stage angel investor or a VC, or again, somebody who's hiring you for the role or letting you get your foot in the door, versus somebody who's making the decisions a little bit higher up. So I think besides knowing that it's all about you, all of this is also just to frame the fact that pitching is hard work, and it involves 90% of it is basically preparation and doing the LinkedIn searches and the sort of searches about the company that you're maybe pitching to ahead of time. And the more prepared you are, the better the pitch is going to be. And the more you practice, the better it's going to become, because it takes a lot of experimentation to figure out what works for you specifically, right? Because everybody has different personalities, different styles. People can give effective pitches in different ways. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to be, flashy. You can give an authentic pitch that's exactly who it is that you are, and express those things when you're giving and presenting yourself in different situations. So in all pitches, I would say, this is specifically maybe a little bit more about business pitches, but in all pitches, you want to be talking about the impact it is that you're going to be having on whatever it is that you're talking about. If you have a project, if you have an engineering project that you're giving an end of term presentation about, you want to be explaining what it is that you've been solving, the problem it is that you're solving. You want to be qualifying the type of problem that it is, right? Explaining, how widespread is it? Why does it matter? And you want to be talking about what your project is going to do to solve this specific problem and the impact that it's going to have on the users or the people who exist in the ecosystem. All of those things help to contextualize what it is that you're doing and explain really what it is that may seem like very small steps of you measuring things out, cutting foam, all of those small things that add up in engineering. It's really important to explain the entire context so that people understand, again, the impact of what it is that you did, because they might not care about the little micro steps that you took, but they will understand the specific human aspect, and most people can relate to that, unless you're giving a highly technical pitch. So this is not geared towards that. So focus on impact. For the pitch tactics itself, how do you focus on impact, and how do you tell your story well? I think the common factor for most types of pitches is that people want to know within context what it is that you've done. They want to be impressed, right? They want to know what it is that you've done and what it is that you've done that's different than maybe other solutions that are out there or other things that other people have done, and why it is that they should really be invested in what it is that you have worked on, whether it's over the past couple weeks, couple months, couple years. Right. So the first one is prioritize sharing external tests of your idea. So everybody has ideas in the shower, but you want to be thinking about what it is that you've specifically done to say that I've talked to, 100 people, I've talked to 1,000 people about this specific thing, and they've all said, yes, this is a problem that I have. That's a much more powerful thing than saying, well, I was sitting there thinking in the shower and, what idea would it be if, we all wore Snuggies? I want to talk to the guy who invented the Snuggie, by the way, but you want to be thinking about sharing these things that prove that you've done some work, right? because that's a big thing for most ideas or most projects, is that most people don't extend past that point of just thinking about things. So anything that you've done that shows that you put in work, that you're committed, that you're invested, will be a differentiator, but also show that you've actually achieved some things. So the same thing is looking forward, right? So if at an early stage with your project, with your idea, with your startup, you want to be talking about the next steps that you're specifically going to be taking, because it shows that, okay, even if you're in an early stage, you've thought through what it is that comes next. It shows that you're committed to following through. It shows that you also have the clarity of vision to execute on those things, right? And so if you're asking for money or if you're asking for engagement, most people want to know that their time or their money is going to be fruitful, and it's not just going to go into a black hole. So those are both very important things. And then the final thing is speaking about what sets you apart in your space, right? So even if you're a hard worker, even if you have clarity of vision, if you're just reinventing the wheel or trying to do the same thing that a million other people are doing, it might not be as compelling to the person that you're talking to. So what sets you apart? What makes you better? Why you? And how is it that you're going to, for business specifically, protect what it is that you're doing and make sure that you maintain a competitive advantage. And so this really also applies to a job interview again, right? You want to know if you have specific examples of things that you've done that relate to the role, you want to be highlighting those. If you have not met, the exact criteria that they have on the ask for the job description, and I have specific feelings about this separately, you should always stretch a little bit. But if you haven't had that specific experience, talk about what it is that you expect to do to fulfill those skills or to fulfill those asks in the job description, and be very specific, right? And you can have a little bit of dialogue and explain how that fits into the bigger picture of who it is that you are, the characteristics that you're going to bring to the role, et cetera, et cetera. And again, you want to be talking about and thinking about differentiation. So if there are 30 people interviewing for the same role, what is it that's going to make you different and better at executing the role, right? Why should they pick you? In pitches, you should make no time to qualify your statements. So I've heard a lot of really early stage projects or startups come to me and say, well, we're really early stage, so we don't have this quite working yet, and we're really thinking through all of these things and whatnot. You don't have time to fluff around or to feel self-conscious about where it is that you are. What you should do is make sure that you just state specific facts and you make positive assertions that just build on each other. You can state very clearly, okay, looking forward, we have a plan to build a beta version of our product in the next 6 months. We're seeking 30K to do this. And you just keep focusing on the things that you maybe have and the things that you need to do. And you don't need to apologize for anything that you are. So it's the same thing. I'm going to say job interview again, because I think that's a universal thing for everybody here. You don't need to apologize for your bad experiences, for the C that you had in biology, for the bad project that you had in chem class. You might be hyper focused on that because high performing people, tend to be perfectionists. But the job interviewer, I think, has maybe, depending on who they are, a little bit of a broader set of criteria that they're using to judge you. So if they ask a question about difficult experience that you had, if they have a question about what it is that you need to do to improve, focus on those things. Don't apologize, but just explain very carefully what it is that happened, maybe what it is that your plan was to improve, and how it is that you plan to take things moving forward. And I think that's a simple formula that you can use for most things, even in giving responses in a business environment. When you have maybe a failure, quote unquote, just explaining what it is that went wrong, what it is that you've learned, what it is that you plan to do to prevent that from happening again. Simple and straightforward. And then the overall pitch tactics, thinking through what things should look like overall. If you have a doubt or a question about what it is that you should be doing or including, you can think about the fact that most people are going to evaluate you based on the overall impression of the quality of your pitch. So if you have like black on white, slides and like paint images that you generated, when you were 4, it's not that it doesn't mean that you've not put in thought, or that you're not that you don't have things of substance. But in a lot of cases, if the surface looks scratched or dented, people might have a question about what's underneath, right? So if people don't have attention to detail about aesthetics or things that they have time to prepare, right? In a scenario where presumably you've had time to prepare a pitch or a presentation, then they might have questions, or it might, skew their impression a little bit. We are visual creatures, right? The second part is that they're going to judge you based on the quality and scope of your value proposition, right? So again, with a project, if you have a very specific small problem that you're solving that's important to you, then you want to be thinking about what is it that's relatable about that thing, or just being authentic about why it is that you chose to solve that specific problem, right? You don't have to apologize for the fact that it's, not solving world peace or cancer or anything like that, but you want to be very specific. And conversely, if you are solving a very big problem, and you have a high impact solution, you want to be emphasizing those things, because I think people have a sense of the scale of the problem that it is that you're solving, and appreciate the difficult work, even if you are early stage. And then you want to be including the quality data. So again, that external test, the traction that you have, you want to be sharing all of those things which prove the fact that, again, you're committed, that you've done the work, that you're the one to solve this problem. And then the last thing is business viability. So this is a little bit more towards the investor angle, but people will come in with different backgrounds and impressions of what it is that's going to be successful, either as a business or as a project. And that's fine, but you need to make sure that you're addressing the specific concerns that they might have. So if you're speaking to a regulator, the business viability, they're going to judge based on how well you know about the regulatory path that you need to take. So again, you want to be addressing those things. The biggest thing that I see people do, I think, or the biggest mistake that they make, is putting in additional information that's irrelevant to the person who's listening. So you want to be keeping things very simple and straightforward, especially because most times for a pitch, you have a very limited amount of time. Even if you had an hour, that's still not a huge amount of time for presumably the amount of work that you've put in to get to that point, right? So you want to be thinking about hitting the high notes of what it is that you've done. And most times the way that you can accomplish this is by making sure that you limit a slide to one takeaway thought. Another tactical thing is making sure that the titles of your slides are key takeaways. So especially if you're giving a technical presentation or something that has to do with a broad concept that you're speaking about for a long period of time, people float in and out in terms of attention. We're all horrible at paying attention. So you want to make sure that when they're looking at what it is that you're doing, that they step away for a second, they look back at your slide, they know generally what's going on. And then again, hitting your high notes and changing your presentation based on who it is that you're talking to. So again, depending on your audience, some parts of your slides, if you're putting together a presentation about a project, you might throw out for some people, right, who don't care about those things. If you're giving a presentation to a general audience and you have a highly technical project, you might want to throw out some of the technical slides and just explain more about the problem and the impact, and your specific value proposition, your competitive advantage, those sort of things. So always make sure that you're reducing as much of the fluff as possible, and really focusing on the parts, again, that make the connection with the person you're talking to. So for a business pitch, this is the part where I talk a little bit more about startups. There's typically, if you have a short presentation or a pitch that you're giving, what I recommend is that you really talk about yourself, your mission, your values, right, the team, the problem that you're solving, and again, quantifying and qualifying that type of problem, explaining your solution, explaining very specifically in a business context how it is that you make money. Everybody forgets this all the time. During my office hours, they tell me about their great solution and their great problem. And I'm like, that sounds like a fantastic effort and fantastic endeavor, but how are you going to make money, right? And within a business and context, that's honestly probably one of the most important pieces, because otherwise it's just a really interesting thought experiment. And that's great. And you could spend a lot of time doing it. But if your specific goal is to make a business, you only have one criteria, and that's making sure you have a paying customer. So you better tell me how you're going to make money. And the next one is traction. Okay, show me that you've done everything that you can with the resources that you have to advance your idea. And even if you're early in the process, tell me what it is that you plan to do next and next and next. Because if you're asking me for grant money, if you're asking me for advice, for counsel, for connections, I want to know that, again, This is not going to go into a black hole, that you're really going to maximize these things and get a return for what it is that we're putting in. And then the sort of next two slides are really about what it is that you're looking for. So a lot of people don't have crystal balls, they don't read minds, so they need to know what it is that you would like. And this is part of the heavy lift that you have in putting together a presentation. A lot of times you might not know what it is that you should be asking for, but take your best crack. Do some research on the person you're talking to. If they have a specific background or a specific connection that you would like, you should make sure that you do the work to figure out what it is that you should be asking for from them. If it's a general ask and you're just open to connections in general, a good question to say, or a good thing to ask for is, who should I be talking to, right? And that's regardless of whether or not you're searching for a job or pitching your startup. And then the last thing is give them a one-liner to take away. So when they go home at night and their partner or their kid asks them what it is that what they did during the day, they should have a one-liner takeaway of what it is that you do, or who it is that you are, or what it is that you want them to remember. And then the most important part about pitching is not being shy about practicing. So if you're giving a formal presentation, my rule of thumb is make sure you run through it 20 times. If you run through it any less than that, you should expect that it's probably not going to be perfect, which is fine. No pitch is ever perfect. But less than 20 times, and you can say that I should have spent more time just running through and refining. The other two most important aspects with those 20-time run-throughs is making sure that you get trusted feedback. So a lot of times things written down don't come across as well when you're saying them to another person, right? And that's the difference between reading a book to yourself and then having your English teacher read it out loud and it's forever ruined. So you want to know what it is that's effective about the way that you're sharing a piece of information, right? Or maybe something isn't clear and you don't realize because you're embedded in the project. But when you explain it to your mom or you present it to your mom, she's like, what the heck are you even working on, right? So having that feedback from a trusted source is really important. And the more diverse, so it depends again on what the purpose of the pitch is, but if it's a general pitch, the more diverse your audience is, the better feedback that you're going to get, because everybody has a little bit of a different perspective and a little bit of a different experience set that can help to inform your messaging. That'll make it clearer to a wider audience. And then one of my favorite things, which is terrible, if you don't have somebody right there in the moment or you need to run through multiple times and you don't want to drive someone crazy, record yourself. I think it's a really good thing to see how it is that things are, again, coming across, and really good to refine some of your language, some of your mannerisms. You figure out that your hands move a lot. Good to know, right? And a lot of the pitch, I guess, energy that you sometimes get is nonverbal. So making sure that you practice also gives you the time to make sure that you, in a very formal environment, can even choreograph what it is that you're saying, can make you feel comfortable with walking back and forth, TED Talk style, right? So you're not crutching on the podium and advancing your slides. The main point is that the more preparation, again, that you do, the more comfortable you're going to be in the moment, right? Because you're going to know things inside and out, right? And so doing the work actually helps you to give the best pitch possible. So if in doubt, make sure that you put in the work. Your slides can be extremely simple, but just make sure you know what it is that you'd like to say and what it is that you'd like people to take away. In terms of overall resources, we've got the Magnuson Center Pitch Deck Guide, which is specific to business pitches. If you're interested in seeing that, you can get in touch with me. I can send that to you. We have office hours. I'm happy to hold office hours, whether or not you're pitching a business. If you'd like to practice your pitch or have a presentation or a pitch deck or any sort of thing that you want help with or that you would like somebody to look through, I'm happy to do those during office hours. And then, if you actually have a startup, I highly encourage you to practice in like formal environments where you have some of those real external pressures of having people watch you. So the pitch is one of those friendly early stage competitions. And I know that people, have different ideas and thoughts about competitions and, what that really does to your idea. But the more you externalize, I think it's the balance of not letting people who are not interested crush your project, but it is informative and useful to you to get those perspectives. So that way, when you encounter them again, you know what it is that you would need to say in order to either convince them otherwise or to give them proof that might change their mind. or just in general to give yourself confidence that what you're doing is still worthwhile. Because actually, okay, you know, I'm not targeting that specific person, so they're not my audience, and that's okay. So again, I don't know, I think it's a really good idea to get your idea out there. So unless you have anything that's super proprietary, if you just have a business concept, talk about it, get some opinions, make sure that you have regular points where you are presenting to somebody other than yourself. So that way you do, again, make those connections that you need to advance your project or your idea. And the overall message and takeaway from me to you is that you can do this, right? And I think that it is just a matter of practice and experimentation. And like I mentioned at the beginning, everybody has a little bit of a different personality and a different style. And so it's just a little bit of work for you to experiment and figure out what works for you, right? So I would never feel comfortable doing the TED Talk style, I don't know, walk back and forth at the stage and like pointing to people, like, you know, I don't forget what it is, you know, life coach style, pep talk, motivational speaking. That's not me. I do not like standing behind a podium. You learn little things, you know, the more that you present and the more that you talk to people. So that's a takeaway message. You can do this. And I guess the practice that I have prepared that I normally also run during the pitch sessions is, if everybody's willing, what I'll ask everyone to do is pick one of these prompts, and we can all practice with each other. So I can also participate if you guys would like. But I'd like you to, if you're working on a startup or a project or an idea, prepare just a one slide takeaway to share with everybody here about what it is that you're doing. If you don't have a project or an idea, or you're not ready to share it, pick a product on Amazon that's under $10. Tell us why we should buy it. We had, I forget it, the first time that I did this, I had somebody who pitched paper clips. And it was revolutionary. And I like had a newfound appreciation for paper clips. And then, you know, if you're not excited by either one of those, you can pick a prompt and just come up with a slide that explains an overall concept to everybody. So I'll stop here. I'll stop sharing my slides.